indoor exhibit in the county's building in which we're going to have sort of the classic California home with the surfboards and flip-flops, and we're going to be able to show you how to save water in each, in the laundry room, the bathroom, in the kitchen, etc. So anyway, ever since Save Our Water was created in 2009, we've done a whole lot of this community outreach too, where we've set up the booth and hand out the materials and talk to people one-on-one about saving water. So I wanted to, whoops, what am I doing
There
wrong?
it goes. There it goes.
Okay, here we go. So what's new this year is in April, we got a very welcome infusion of $1 million from the governor and the legislature in emergency drought funding. And that's allowed us to do things we would not have been able to do at all to this point. And we're really grateful for it. And one of the things we've been able to do includes paid advertising. So working together, the designers, the graphic designers at Aqua and DWR created a series of the Californians Don't Waste public service announcements that Jennifer told you about. We think this theme helps cross regional divides, and we think it helps pull the state together. And we chose it in part because it works for electricity too. And we are teaming up with the California utilities this year with a Save Water, Save Energy, Save Water campaign. And that will help strengthen, I think, the statewide ethic of conservation too. And a couple of months ago, we launched what we're calling the Californians Don't Waste Challenge, in which we're inviting people to submit photos and videos of themselves saving water in different ways, and they can submit that Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and we've gotten a whole lot of really interesting stuff. Here we go. We have to screen it, of course.
We do screen.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to know the
But,
flavor.
we've got the video of the guy showing you how he uses a bucket to capture the water as he's warming his shower to then turn and use the water to flush his toilet. So it's great free generation of water-saving tips. So also, we created, with the help of videographers at California's Office of Emergency Services, 4 video public service announcements on the Californians Don't Waste theme. And the actors in these videos are Aqua and DWR employees, and including one woman at a laundromat that just jumped in and wanted to help. So these are, they're out there in the toolkit for anyone to use, and they've aired on television stations. And we've also created, come on, why is this not going? Here we go. Yeah, with the money, the $1 million, we've been able for the first time to pay for paid advertising, and we've done billboards, and we've done radio spots all over the state, and social media and digital advertising and boosts. And including, we were fortunate enough to have East Bay Mud donate or pay for the entire month of April a huge billboard at the eastern end of the Bay Bridge.
Oh, yeah, that's the one
And
I see going
who
on.
knows how many people that reached.
That's great.
We were grateful for that kind of help. We also did some of the advertising on the internet-based radio services Pandora and iHeart, and got a pretty good response from that.
That's
With our
good.
digital and social media boosts and advertisements, we've been able to go from 50,000 Facebook followers in, that was probably March. Now we're up beyond 73,000. And on Twitter, we've got 10,000 followers. So that's moving forward. So if the next budget that the governor signs hopefully includes more money for Save Our Water, and we're hopeful that it will, we will continue our social media and digital efforts. We will continue to work with the utilities on the Save Water, Save Energy campaign this summer. We've got a 100 Days of Summer campaign that we're pulling together that will feature a tip every day, or feature a local corporation or business or person who's got a great idea on how to save water. We're going to continue to produce more PSAs. We hope to work with corporations, including Home Depot. We're hoping they will help us underwrite PSAs or use their video capabilities. We're looking for partnerships on product giveaways. We'd love to see some of these stores like Home Depot featuring water-saving products, and all of that has to be negotiated. We're also working with 4 Major League Baseball teams and hope to have deals cut with them real soon, just within a few weeks. So if you got any questions, we're happy to answer them.
That's great. Yeah, sure.
I was talking to Richard Harris from East Bay Mud just before this meeting, and both of us were worried about how the messaging is going to be handled I'm sorry, how the messaging is going to be handled on El Nino. You know, there's been a lot in the press, and are you reaching out to news to the news
Yeah,
media?
We've got DWR has done quite a bit, and so has the governor's office on their drought webpage to let folks know, look, we don't know what El Nino is going to mean for us. There have been drought years brought to us by El Nino and flood years and years in between. So every chance we get, and we do get lots of reporters' questions, or we did a few weeks ago, it's really died off. We do emphasize that, and we put reporters in touch with our climatologists and our experts at DWR to let them know. No one can count on El Nino this year.
Well, basically, Karen and George, wherever you are, I think our interagency staff who are working on drought and on messaging need to do a special outreach to the press, because it's my understanding that at the end of June, early July, the predictions are going to be out there, and no matter what they are, up, down, sideways, we need to be prepared to respond in an appropriate way.
Right. That sounds like actually good material for a blog for the Save Our Water website. We can do that.
Yeah, and just to touch on that, this program is very nimble. And when we learned that the governor was going to be declaring a drought, it was a 24-hour overhaul of that website. So we're able
That was
to
pretty
move
incredible, actually.
pretty swiftly, and that's part of what the partnership allows. So
That is great.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
thank you.
Really terrific. All right. All right, Max and Carlos. Give us the top line messages from the survey.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair Marcus and board members. I'm Max Gomberg, the climate change advisor to the board, and with me is Carlos Mejia from the Office of Chief Counsel, and I'm going to report on the results of the survey that we conducted back in May. So, as has been mentioned, the April executive order from the governor directed the board to assess progress on water conservation from urban suppliers in response to the drought. We sent out a survey on May 23rd to collect data for that assessment. And in designing that survey, we had support from the Department of Water Resources as well as the Department of Public Health, along with AQUA and CUA, California Urban Water Agencies, and the California Urban Water Conservation Council. So we did a significant amount of consultation in putting this together, and you can see what we asked for was essentially, who's doing what in terms of plan implementation, specific measures, and some water production data. So we didn't get the level of responses we would have hoped for, and partially that's because we had some issues with the survey. We didn't have the best list of contacts. We had some errors on that, outdated information. Also, some of the surveys went into recipients' spam or junk mail boxes, unfortunately. So if the board directs staff to follow up and collect additional data going forward, I can assure you we will get a better response rate. I think we've learned from this. But as you can see, we did reach almost 2/3 of the state's population in the responses we received. So we did collect water production data as part of this survey, and I want to go through the specifics of this. So we collected the data from wholesale and retail water suppliers, and we removed the wholesaler production data to avoid double counting. For the wholesalers that are also retailers, such as the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission and others, we prorated the data based on the ratio of the retail to the wholesale population. So it is a proration. And as you can see, we got complete data from most folks. We didn't get it from everyone, and of those that did not submit the production data, the biggest gap is San Diego County. And for San Diego County, the County Water Authority and some of its retail agencies declined to submit that data. They felt that the comparison period that staff came up with, 2011 through 2013, was inappropriate for various reasons. That in 2011, Metropolitan Water District had imposed restrictions on deliveries to its member agencies. So that drove use down. 2011 winter was wet, which drove use down, and we were still in sort of an economic recovery. So essentially use was lower during that period, and therefore what our data provides does not sort of show a full picture. But
So they were saying because they didn't like the way you asked the question, they weren't going to answer it, rather than answering it and then putting caveats on it so that we could understand what they did do?
that's correct.
Interesting choice.
I have another question on that. Did they suggest maybe a different period of time in which to compare?
Yes, they did. In fact, we heard from a number of agencies and associations. And in fact, I believe the board received a letter from the Southern California Water Committee sort of outlining recommendations. But basically what was suggested was the baseline for 20 by 2020 that is in the 2009
Right, but
legislation.
The question was geared around people's response to the governor's call to cut back this January. It wasn't about how are you doing on 2020.
Yes, and we were clear about that.
Yeah, I'm going to, we can talk about this in follow-up, but I'm going to want to ask the question again.
Yeah. Oops. So, you know, we tried to keep it fairly short and focused on just a few things. You'll note that there were a lot of written comments submitted that provided context, and the staff really appreciates the many suppliers that took the time to provide this valuable context and written comments. I read all 688 comments, and it was really insightful to learn about all the serious conservation efforts that are underway around the state.
Are you
So-
prepared to tell me your favorites when you're done?
In fact, they're in here, so I
Oh,
will,
perfect.
I'll get to them. So as you can see, just about everyone has a plan for how to deal with a water shortage or a drought. However, so far this year, only slightly over half the folks that we surveyed have formally invoked that plan. And you know, some of them have had their water shortage plan in effect well before this year. And I'll note that in the written comments, there were multiple suppliers that reported that their boards or city councils would be considering additional actions in June. But, you know, based on our survey results, there were 47% of respondents who have not invoked any type of water shortage or contingency plan. Okay. So this chart shows what urban suppliers have reported on in terms of having a shortage. And what you can see is the blue and the red are the quarter of respondents who have reported a shortage, either more than 20% or less than 20%. Almost half the respondents are not reporting a shortage. However, you know, there's almost a third that did not respond to this question.
Is there, when people said they have no shortage, what did that mean to them? They don't have a shortage this year, they don't have a shortage forever? What time horizon?
We didn't specify, so I think the interpretations of that question varied. Reading some of the comments, I think it meant we don't have a shortage this year or immediately, It doesn't mean that by the end of the year, they might not have a shortage. For some folks, it meant our wholesaler doesn't have a shortage or hasn't reported one. So I think the interpretations on this one varied.
Did you notice any trends, geographic or otherwise, with those that report no shortage?
We would have to go back and look. We didn't go down and look at the regional trends on this one.
Interesting question.
Same question on no response.
Oh, did they come from a
Right.
certain geography? That's
So
interesting.
we don't have that immediately available, but we can certainly pull it out of the
Okay.
data.
And the no response, is that the number of people who responded but did not respond on the shortage, or the total number of people that did not respond?
It's the former. It's out of the 270 responses, the percentage that didn't respond to this question on shortage.
Do you think maybe, looking back in hindsight, of course, 2020, if we better define what a shortage was, we might get more useful information. So in terms of, assuming a dry year in 2014, 2015, would you have a shortage and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think we would have to really clearly define what we mean by shortage so that everyone was answering based on that same understanding. So these two charts are a comparison of the water suppliers that have invoked their contingency plans and those that haven't. And remember, it's about 53% of the respondents that have invoked them, 47% that haven't. So what you can see on the right is those that have invoked the plans, it's a much larger share that have now gone to mandatory conservation measures, whereas on the left, you see that those that haven't invoked some sort of water shortage or contingency plan, about 3/4 of them are basically asking for voluntary measures.
Is there, on that, you don't have to go back, is that because legally they cannot invoke mandatory without having without having a drought plan, moving up in the stages on drought planning?
Well, about 94% of them have drought plans. So
Right.
it's not a question of not having one.
But using it, putting it into use.
It's not my understanding that there are any legal constraints.
Okay.
They have boards that can, take those actions based on their judgment for the most part. So here are some of the results on specific actions we culled from the survey. And you can see just about everyone has really stepped up the outreach and the messaging, which is great. And almost 2/3 are requesting 20% conservation in line with the governor's ask. A note on the 7% on short-term drought pricing, that just refers to something like a drought conservation surcharge or drought rates, not to a sort of underlying pricing or rate design. So what you can see here, and what we did was we took the average combined average of 2011 through 2013 by month and compared it then to 2014 data that was provided to us. And what you can see is January, water use was up around the state. January was an incredibly dry month with virtually no precipitation, so that's not surprising. And then it's flat February through April, and then what you can see is May looks good. There's been a significant decline in usage, around 25%. Now we have to caveat this. We sent the survey on May 23rd. Not everyone who replied to it had finalized May data, so some of this is based on estimation. But nevertheless, it's a promising sign that the May usage went down. So here's the results by region. So statewide, again, this is comparing 2011 through 2013 to 2014 data. Statewide, water use is down by 5%. And then you can see the rest of the regions. Sacramento region doing well. The Bay Area doing not so well. This is for everyone. In the Sacramento region, for areas that reported having a shortage, use is down by 12%. And in the South Coast, for areas, again, that reported a shortage, use is down by 13%. So there really is a difference between folks who have already reported shortage and actions they've taken and those that haven't.
Could you do this? I'm not suggesting you do it, but if you did it for May, you'd get a different set of numbers. Or would it be the same, just with different numbers, proportionally?
I think we'd get a different set of numbers, just May to May.
Yeah.
And do you feel comfortable that you had enough responses to be fairly representative in each region? I mean, it's not like, you know, a particular San Francisco Bay showing at 2% is because only one response came from San Francisco Bay.
No, we had pretty good representation by region. So in terms of the written comments, just pulled a few. We found that there are a significant number of retailers who really follow the lead of their wholesale agency, and this is not true just in Southern California. We saw it in Northern California also, that a lot of the retailers look to the wholesaler to sort of signal when it's time to take additional actions. And in Southern California in particular, you know, a lot of the reporting was, well, we are sort of following Met's lead. We know that, you know, reservoir levels are being drawn down, but there's nothing, you know, sort of imminent.
So, where is San Diego? What have they declared or said about the drought?
I believe their county water authority has asked for 10% voluntary reduction.
Wow.
And we don't have the data.
Because they
since
didn't
they
give it to
didn't
us.
provide it. So it's hard to say, but certainly if we do this again, we will
Well, yeah, I
find
may
out.
just make a phone call. What about Met?
So we didn't pull out Met specifically, again, because they're a
You
wholesaler.
went to the retailers.
Right.
All right. We should find out.
So these are just a couple of examples of how urban suppliers are responding to the drought. You know, there's clearly a lot of good work going on out there to boost conservation, and a lot of innovation in how to do it. As you've seen through the data, you know, although May looks good, it seems like there's more work to be done. And after the next two panels, we'll be back to discuss options the board could consider for emergency regulations. But that's all for now. So thank you, and questions.
Great.
One question, you saw the presentation that Mark made on DPH information. Is that a mechanism that we could use? You know, their listing, and they've got what, 6 years of information, which would show trends. Now this is 2013; it's not 2014, so we'd have to supplement. But do you see some promise there of using that on an ongoing basis?
I think there's some potential. It's certainly valuable. Like you said, they've been collecting it for 6 years. You know, we did consult with them and DWR sort of in developing this, and decided we needed to conduct our own survey for a number of reasons. So we can't rely on it exclusively, but I think, you know, it certainly is data that's valuable as we figure out, you know, how to track drought response going forward.
Oh, real quick, I'd like, you know, we were only just getting the May data, which was a dry month. So that's going to be useful when it's complete. But wouldn't you say that really, the tail of the tape on this, the real interpretation of our collective response to drought can only really be discerned by comparing dry summer months to previous dry summer months because of the noise introduced by weather and rainfall and that sort of thing?
I think, comparing the summer usage will give a much clearer picture. We issued this survey when we did because that's what was asked of us.
Other questions? Great. Thank you. I know you'll be here the whole time, and we'll have all kinds of questions about what our authorities are and all the rest too, Carlos. So glad you're here as well. And thank you, Max, for all your work on this. Eric, you too, and others. We're now going to, just so you know, we're going to go through the panels, and then we're going to hear from the public that's here. There may be some, and then I'm going to ask the staff, I'm going to let you take a break, get caffeine, whatever, look at the sun, hope it rains. But you can look at the sun. It's nice, too. And ask staff to come back with some suggestions. We'll give a little bit of direction, but I want to give them a little bit of time to add thoughts that you all may have into some of the basic ones. And also, if you will, include not just the directives from the governor, but his actual suggestions. I think you may have those, but he had actual suggestions as well. He's pretty specific, so.
We'll include those.
Great. So now we're going to hear from some of the water supplier associations on data collection, outreach, and work, and we've got a bunch of progressive voices. Association of California Water Agencies, Dave Boland, California Urban Water Agencies, Bo Goldie, also Santa Clara Valley Water District, and the California Urban Water Conservation Council, Greg Weber. Thank you all for joining us. Hopefully, as you talk with us about what your members are doing and the like, you'll help give us your best thoughts on what you think we ought to do. Because if I were a betting person, I'd say, we're going to do something. So it'd be nice to have you help us shape it.
Thanks, Chair Marcus.
Not really.
No,
Yeah.
that's my cue. So I've got
Thank
my
you, Dave.
presentation up, and I'm ready to go. Dave
Great.
Boland with the Association of California Water Agencies. Can you go to the second slide? Let's see. Oh, I can do it myself. Okay, so Aqua represents 90% of the public water agencies in California. We provide water for both ag and for urban. Obviously, we're focused on urban water use in this particular case, but we do not provide water for the municipal utilities and investor-owned utilities who, we'll hear from, but basically the public water agencies in California. We've been expressing a strong support for urban ag conservation consistently for a long time at a policy level. Just touching on the State Water Action Plan that the association did, 100 of our public water agencies have endorsed that plan. It's a comprehensive approach to water management in California. It does include a robust commitment to conservation, both for ag and urban. And then our board of directors, after the first order in January, our board of directors urged our member agencies to call on their retailers, or their customers actually, to ramp up water conservation statewide. So that was ahead of the April call for redoubling efforts. And then Aqua partners with DWR in the Save Our Water program, which we've heard about, and that's been an effective tool for a long time, and our members are pretty linked into using that resource, as has been discussed. Aqua continues to, and our member agencies are continuing to lead on this issue at a policy level. We're encouraging water conservation, water use efficiency, and committed to this 20 by 2020 process, which we're going to get to in a minute, which has been also talked about by Department of Water Resources. But we do have this website that we initiated, and Jennifer mentioned the fact that we retooled our website, and then our Drought Watch link is available for folks if they want to Google that. It talks about some of the other related drought impacts around the state. We've recently released a drought impact report, which has a lot of recommendations, including some stuff on conservation. Yeah, I've got a handout here, but that's I'll get to that in a second as to what that's all about. And actually, I'm there now. One of the things on our drought website is an interactive map, and that was brought back by popular demand from the previous drought cycle when we tried to graphically show real-time what was happening in California, as close to real-time as we could. Our technology's gotten better, and we've been asking agencies to self-report about what's going on, you know, in terms of drought intensity. And the screenshot here is from a few days ago. Basically, this interactive map has been used by media sources around the world, actually, to find out what's happening in California. And the top line indications are that at least 54 agencies have reported on this vehicle that they're in mandatory restrictions of conservation. Now, all these numbers, we'll get to that in a second. These numbers are not aligned necessarily with the survey responses. And in fact, we've got a survey I'm going to get to in a minute, which is not necessarily the self-reported data either. So there's a lot of numbers here, but bottom line is at least 54 agencies have reported and are on this drought map as having mandatory restrictions, and 150 agencies are for voluntary, and so you can get kind of a proportional feel. We have 430 member agencies, so this is a significant part of our membership that's reporting here. And then drought emergencies in 28 counties and cities. And then some areas that are really feeling the pain right now that are indicated here that we're hearing about that have mandatory rationing, conservation allotments that are in effect right now. The latest to join that list will be the city of Avalon, which begins on July 1st. Mm-hmm. Information survey that we put out, again, we didn't do a random sample survey in the traditional sense. This is a voluntary informal survey that we put out a few weeks ago, and we got 56%, then we had respondents of about 100 agencies that responded back on that one, and 56% of them say that their primary source of supply has been reduced due to the drought, and more than half are facing cutbacks in deliveries. About one half are drawing down surface storage to cope. About a third are relying more heavily on groundwater. 77% have drought contingency plans in place right now. And again, this is of a sample that's different than the sample you had, so, but a substantial number of the respondents. 82% have expanded public education and outreach. 59% are offering rebates and financial incentives. This is an important point we'll get back to in a moment. Some of these incentives are not cost effective locally. They're expensive. And TURF is one of those package or programs that are very popular but very expensive. Right. Another one is the clothes washer rebates. And that's important because they have effect, but they also have a cost, and we need to get back to that in a minute.
These are good points. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Boland. Could you go back one slide? Because this is one that I'm having, or thank you, one more forward. Take your time. I did want to see that list of the communities, so that was helpful. But keep going forward.
Forward or back?
It was only one back. One more. There you go. So the third bullet, about one half are drawing down surface storage to cope. So that would mean then the other half are drawing down groundwater storage,
well,
because
again,
who's getting fresh water right now?
Good and it goes to the retail versus wholesale. And then the other thing that I have to admit is I believe this informal survey may have been open to all comers. So we have some ag water agencies that may have added their perspectives in here too.
Okay, good.
And we were trying to focus on the urban agencies for this purpose. The other thing that's going on here is that we were focused on the broader drought impacts as we were inquiring of these folks, and we had a subset of questions related to conservation, as opposed to a survey like the one that the Water Board was doing strictly related to conservation.
Right. No, I
So,
appreciate
can I
it.
ask you a question?
It's always complicated, but
Yeah.
that does intuitively kind of run afoul of basic logic. You know, that at this point,
Only 50% are drawing down on their surface reservoir.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time with that.
One way you might be able to rationalize that is the point that was made, the second point that was made about Southern California's supply security, at least in the early months of this drought situation, earlier in the winter. there was a perception that, and not just perception, a reality that surface storage was full to the brim in Southern California. And that was putting them in a very secure position. And so they didn't immediately need to draw that down. And of course, we were in the winter and spring, and we're going to get to that, and that's been a point made several times.
Good.
We are yet to really enter into the big water demand months for outdoor irrigation.
Good.
And so lots of things are going to change probably as we move into the next few months, and you made that point yourself.
And that's right. That's a really good point. This is moving so quickly, and I'm actually very impressed with the amount of response of the agencies. It's fairly real time, and it's a moving target, and we'll have to stay in close touch.
And then the other element, which I'm going to underscore, is the regionality of this whole thing and the localness of this issue in terms of the perception of the drought, the impacts of the drought, and the capabilities of the agencies and their structures to respond, quickly and with significant resources. And we'll
All right.
touch
I
on
appreciate
as
that. Thank you.
So back to some of the things that they're doing, 59% with rebates, 82% increasing customer willingness to conserve. That's in accordance with the message that we got on Save Our Water. A lot of people want to do something. They're just not sure if it's them. It's usually their neighbor that's actually wasting water. And in fact, the other thing that it's a perception thing is that they think they're wasting more water in the house than they are in the yard. So these are pretty big messaging issues that we've got looking forward. So in terms of responses, our agencies are doing, asking for a range from 10% reductions up to 60% reductions in outdoor water use. There are some agencies that are doing that. Outdoor irrigation limited to certain days and hours, that's pretty typical. Drought-related surcharges and penalties for excessive use, that's becoming, we're looking at that. There's been a lot of attention on that issue. There are a few sensitivities related to the water pricing issue, which has been kind of unfolding for a while as a policy consideration in different agencies. And then the idea of expanding these rebate and turf programs, although, like I say, they're kind of expensive. A lot of them have paid advertising campaigns, recycled water refill stations, which are open to all comers. In some cases, the recycled water is just like open for a tap, and people can fill it up and take their water truck out and save their landscaping. Water audits and efficient shower heads, these are all kind of standard packaging things, conservation kits, town hall meetings, and weekly updates. And these are all things that we've been receiving from our members saying that this is what they're doing. Really high level, just want to touch on a few examples. You were talking about wanting your best stories. All of our children are above average. I'll just say that right off the bat. And so the folks that I'm talking about here are not super above average. They're just representative, we think. We're trying to share the glory here in terms of Northern and Southern California. Also, I was aware of the fact we had a panel coming up where they're going to tell their stories too. So this is just, you'd have to consider this kind of a scattergun sampler of agencies that you're aware of and that we're all aware of that are doing some things. And of course, Sonoma County Water Agency has been carrying the program that Jennifer had mentioned on the Save Our Water program. They've got a kind of a customized version of it. And they've got a 20% voluntary conservation target, and then all of their contractors are implementing that as well. San Diego County Water Authority, who's been discussed, they also are implementing a voluntary conservation program, and they have their own Win in Drought campaign. Most of the content is aligned with the stuff in Save Our Water. The campaign is supported by $300,000 of funding from DWR, and they are working in consultation with Save Our Water. City of Sacramento has got a mandatory 20% conservation requirement. They've got a bunch of patrols going out there. The bottom paragraph mentions 2,300 notices of violation have been filed by the city. They've repurposed some folks. 40 different staff have been out patrolling. This is quite a story, and if you want kind of the most improved in the class sort of thing, this might be an example where Sacramento, as we know, those of us who live here, is just now finally getting a lot of their water meters put in place. And so metering is an important tool. We've seen the effect of that. Fresno, again, has a story to tell on that. Sacramento's also seeing the effect of metering. They're spending $1 million in Sacramento on a whole package of modifications in their infrastructure, but as well as a Cash for Grass and an education and enforcement campaign. Southern California, again, a regional wholesaler, has doubled its budget to $40 million $5.5 million on just the public education side. And they've got several specific classes and training programs that they're providing for all of their member agencies. So that's 20 million people in California that they serve and touch on. And then Dublin San Ramon Services District, right here in the Livermore, Dublin San Ramon area, has fairly significant water use limitation penalties. They did this through ordinance recently. Mandatory 25% reduction, 60% reduction, 50 to 60 for outdoor irrigation.
Wow.
No washdowns is prohibited. Fountains are prohibited. Pools have to be covered, and then all the rebate programs. So pretty significant commitment there on their part. And they have also a recycled water program, and they're trying to emphasize that folks, and not just emphasize, they're requiring that if folks have access to recycled water, they have to use that, not potable water for landscaping. And that will require some infrastructure changes. So observations. Public outreach is a key component, as we know. Save Our Water program is important. We want to continue to carry that forward. It's consistent. It carries a good, strong California scale-wide message. However, it can be customized, and that's the great thing about this, because conservation happens locally. Many conservation programs and enforcement activities are just now beginning to influence the water users, and that's an important thing. There's a cycle in every kind of crisis. There's sort of the public awareness, then there's the questions and the nuancing, and trying to figure out how does this affect me, and does it affect me? And I think we're kind of in that phase now, frankly. And then there's the period in which you're reacting, responding. And I think we're just now beginning to see that kicking in. And so a lot of what we've heard back from our folks is that we need to see how things are perceived, and we need to maybe redo some of our survey work after the summer to find out how we got, what kind of response we got, and then calibrate things. Conservation irrigation season is really summer. It's the outdoor irrigation season. That's our real opportunity to save a lot of water quickly, and we just now, May, interestingly, is when we are starting to irrigate more than we have. Although, interestingly, January, we had a lot of irrigation going on in California, all over the state, because it was the driest January on record. So, again, we need to kind of pace ourselves here, that we're in kind of a marathon run. We got to assume that we're going to be in a dry year next year, maybe one, heaven forbid, more dry years after that, and that this is a marathon that we're running here. And we need to pace ourselves and not completely go all out and burn ourselves out and just hit the wall. And that's an important message too, in terms of customer credibility. Our local agencies have a credibility level with their customers that's a pretty significant resource. And we need to make sure that the story they're telling is believable, and that their customers continue to have a respect for the level of crisis that's being communicated to them by their water agencies, and that it's not the same in all parts of the state. So that's an important consideration. And that's the final point here, is if dry conditions persist, all of these agencies are going to have to step up their efforts, and they know that. But part of it's pacing. Policy
Can I ask you a question about that? Because this is one of those things that we do need input into how to think about it. You could say it that way, but if we're looking now at there being enough water for the people of California, spending down those storage resources now, this summer, could be an imprudent and unreasonable thing for folks to be doing. So how do you calibrate that in terms of the overall picture in California? My view, and Fran and I were talking about this, having looked at the Australia years of denial and the crisis they ended up being in because they kept thinking it was going to rain the next year, if they had taken more prudent measures, particularly when you think about outdoor irrigation and the like, earlier they would have had a bigger bank account of water and storage. And so that seems to me to be the $64,000 question. And it seems to me that even though folks might get mad if it rains this fall and we inconvenience them for now, if it doesn't rain, it will have been the right thing to do. And so you want to err on the side of caution. I'm having trouble trying to think about, I don't disagree with you coming out of local government myself. I do think that relationship is important. I think that relationship varies among departments, and the question, we're not talking about telling everybody exactly what to do, but determining as a community what's reasonable.
Right.
When we may be facing a drought of the greatest proportions that we've had, it's already, we know this year is going to have the worst impact of any drought in modern times.
Yes.
If it doesn't rain in this winter, it's going to be way worse.
Yes.
So we're staring at a disaster of incalculable proportions. That's what, it's hard to know how to do it. I want to be polite, and I have a lot of respect for local agencies, but I also make sure we do our job. So I'm not disagreeing with what you said, but I'm struggling with, I say we have to assume that 2015 is going to be a nightmare, and if it's not, we can have a party.
And the hard part is that the answer might be different in different parts of the state, no matter what happens. And I guess the point here is that, and there are a lot of considerations, and there are a lot of policy considerations beyond just conservation and the resources we put in conservation. Because as we all know, we're working ahead and on the longer term commitments to water management in California, and there are some investments we need to make. Some of them certainly are going to be no regrets investments. Things that we can do now that are going to make our reliability better long term, drought or no drought, and are going to reduce demand permanently.
Right.
And I've actually got a couple of bullets on that point, that this idea of demand hardening has been a concern, a concept that's been out there for a while. It's my second bullet here. The first bullet being this issue of the 20 by 20, 20% versus the governor's 20%, and the idea, is it 40% now? Or is there a 10% credit do you get? Or, there's a lot of kind of policy concerns that I don't think anybody's thought through exactly. And the crux of it, I think, comes down to the long haul, the idea that we are committed to a new paradigm for water use in California, and we made a down payment in 2009 on saying, we think we can take off 20% permanently going forward. And then the question that Fran brought up with, should we revisit that and maybe raise the bar on that goal? But that goal is a systemic goal, a commitment to a new way of managing water in California, and it's a long-term commitment. And then we have this drought situation, and traditionally the way conservation has always worked is it was only invoked and usually invoked for a crisis response. And that's what we're doing now. We're doing the crisis response stuff. But interestingly, we're getting some of our savings and a lot of the activities focused in these longer term commitments. These agencies are already on a track to do 20%. They're already messaging and restructuring, for instance, on irrigation and, the new California landscape, for instance. That's a long-term commitment that we're making, and we can continue to invest in that. We're going to get some savings from that kind of investment, and some of that will help us with the crisis, the immediate emergency response, but it's going to be permanently part of our DNA going forward. So I think I'm just raising in these policy considerations, not recommendations, but just things to think about, I think, for all of us, is what is the reduction, kind of what we're talking about here, and can we brand maybe different colors of reduction, kind of orange and red, and say, well, we want them both, and we want this much of each. But the difficult thing with the numeric targets and in general communications with the agencies and, of course, with their customers is that we need to kind of clarify in our own minds, I think, what is our policy direction. And I guess our observation is that isn't clear yet, and so we need to work on that at a state level. And then the additional structural conservation related to demand hardening, and the idea that early adopters and low-hanging fruit are easy, they get tapped easily, you start seeing those savings, we might see those in just a few months, and then it's going to be harder toward the end of the summer or in communities where they have less flexibility.
Well, doesn't a lot of that depend on outdoor versus indoor irrigation percentages?
Yes, and that's the other thing too, is the indoor is kind of getting built into our infrastructure, and we've touched on that a little bit too, and we can expect that going forward. But the bad secret is there's a lot of the housing stock that is old, and it will continue to be old, and bit by bit it will get retrofitted as folks go in and take out those 7-gallon toilets, but there's still a lot of them out there. So there is this indoor use situation that, we've got methods for dealing with it, looking at the new faucets or the new clothes washer standards that might come out in the future. But then we still have to retrofit the folks that never did buy the the second generation, clothes washer or the first generation clothes washer. So there's a lot of that needs to be considered. And technology does change the matrix there. So demand hardening is not an absolute concept. It's a variable thing, and it's variable in different parts of the state and different cultures, even within the irrigation community, for instance, just the landscaping variability there. And then continuing more intense outreach and education obviously needs to be a commitment, and enforcement. And this is an awkward message as well. And I think, good example is Sacramento stepping up and not only issuing the letters, their first notices, but going to second notices and even to third notices and actually finding folks. And so that's going to have to happen, particularly as things get more intense this summer. And then capacity to conserve during the irrigation season. We have more capacity. Obviously, we need to start seeing that capacity and the results from that. And so the focus during the summer on irrigation. And then the water agencies focusing on reducing demand and expanding supply, or they need to do both supply and demand. And this is part of our overall SWAP message. We've got to continue to realize that we aren't going to conserve our way into the future, that conservation is an important contribution, and we are not going to shrift ourselves on conservation commitments, but we need to, at the same time, be doing recycled water, stormwater capture, groundwater remediation, desalination, new storage, surface and groundwater, and that's all part of the package. And then the recommendations, the state should affirm that local agencies are best positioned. We already have a pretty strong policy commitment by the state water plan and all the other venues, the governor's action plan, but we need to continue to stay the course on that idea. Consider that drought response clearinghouse idea, particularly for the emergency measures, a package like the council does, and we'll hear from the council, a great thing on BMPs and kind of the long-term institutional commitments to conservation, but the silver bullets, the new ideas, the innovative things that are happening that our agencies are discovering as they see these conservation changes, we need to have a place where we can store all that stuff, and we need to think about who might be a good clearinghouse for that, and just be able to have toolboxes available so that agencies that don't have quite the R&D capabilities could just step in and say, we're going to do some from menu A and some from menu B. Target increased funding. That's obviously important. The disadvantaged communities, the conservation programs that are not locally cost effective, and some of those programs like Cash for Grass and Clothes Washers are a good example. That's where we should be targeting some of the state funding because the state as a whole is going to benefit from a more resilient water use future. And then the state working with the locals, of course, to do some better work on planning. We have all these plans out there on water management, and I'm very familiar with all of them, but this idea that every so often a drought comes along and we're maybe not as adept at pre-anticipating how droughts work and how to anticipate them within the planning structure and kind of mainstream that response. The idea that the climate change is going to increase the frequency, and possibly the intensity of these droughts, and that we need to build that into our long-term water management infrastructure. And that's my
Great.
presentation,
Thank you.
and I'm sorry I went long.
Well, we asked you a lot of questions, so thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Goldie,
Well,
nice to see you.
good afternoon, and Chair Marks, thanks for inviting us today. I am Bo Goldie, CEO of Santa Clara Valley Water District, but today I'm here as the soon-to-be chair of CUA, and I wanted to first thank you for inviting us to speak today. I was going to provide an overview of who CUA is, and then talk about what the CUA agencies themselves have been investing in terms of conservation and reliable supplies, and then talk more specific to the drought. CUA is an organization, nonprofit organization. We have 10 members. We are all urban water agencies. It was established in 1990. It's been 24 years now. We have